everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Self Improvement Project. Now, this week I have a special guest on the show. I've started to collaborate with other people to discuss all things self improvement, and this week's episode is with an individual called Linda Bjork. And Linda has a fascinating story around her journey from struggling with elements of depression, being broken, the piling up of things that we discuss during the episode today. And there are some absolute nuggets of gold in here that I can't wait for you to listen to reflect upon, and to take and use for your own benefit and your own self improvement. So I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to hearing what you take from it. Cheers. Now, I know we've had like a bit of back and forth on the messages, and I did think of like some questions that purely from my own curiosity I wanted to kind of pick your brains about, because it sounds like you've got a really interesting story that you've got to share, and through your book and things like that. But I think it would just be nice if you wanted to kind of introduce yourself first of all, and any kind of key things from that for the listeners.
Wonderful. Well, hello, my name is Linda Bjork. I'm from the United States. I am an author. I am a podcast host. I also run a nonprofit charity called Hope for Healing, where we help people to be happy and to be able to improve themselves, which is a really good fit. In fact, I'm so excited to be sharing my story today. I love the idea of a podcast dedicated to self-improvement. And I hope that as I share my story today, it can help inspire people to want to become a better version of themselves, and also to know that they can become a better version of themselves. So I'm super excited, and thank you for having me here today.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think when we first connected, that being a better version of yourself is something I definitely live by. So that was definitely a good part of how we connected. And another big thing that stood out for me was your communication around empowering others. Could you tell me a wee bit about where that stems from, and any, great impact that you feel that's had on others in your life, or with your non-for-profit or anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. So my personal mission is to help empower people to become their best selves. And the reason it has the word empower in is it's not to make anybody do anything, or to force or coerce or anything, but to help give them their own power. It's been interesting, Lawrence. I also am a podcast host, and I've talked with people from all around the world and all different kinds of subjects. And what comes up over and over again is our own sense of power, and how that word is misunderstood and misconstrued. Some people think power is where your cruelty, you use power over other people. And it has, what I'm talking about has nothing to do with that. It's the power that we have within ourselves, that we feel in control of ourselves. We feel like we can own our own problems, and that we can handle them, and that we feel like we can just be able to move forward and to be able to reach out and help other people. It's about being comfortable in your own skin. There's so many different aspects to it, but that idea that we have to be empowered. In fact, not too long ago, I was speaking with, she's a counselor and expert who helps people recover from sexual trauma. And one of the things that they work on is helping people gain their power back, because they feel like that power has been taken away. And it can be a traumatic experience like these people that she's helping, or it could be a whole host of other things. But it just keeps coming back to that we feel that we have our own power, that we're in control of ourselves. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I know you'll feel this as well, but there's an immense satisfaction that you can get from helping others realize that, almost
Oh,
like
for sure.
a light switch, I guess. Um, have you had any major? I know you were saying about that conversation, but have you worked with anybody or helped anybody with that before that resonates with you or was uh quite a striking moment for you at all?
Excellent question. So I'm going to flip this around just a little bit, and instead of saying how I helped somebody else, I'm going to share how somebody helped me. Is it okay if I share my story a little bit?
Perfect.
All right. So I don't know, Lawrence, if you're familiar with the Japanese art form called kintsugi, where they take broken pottery and then they put it back together using lacquer mixed with gold dust. And it creates something that is beautiful and unique, and it's stronger than it was before it was broken. It goes from broken to beautiful. And my story is a transformation from broken to beautiful. Now, there's different kinds of broken. Like you're walking across the street, you accidentally drop your cell phone, and the screen cracks. And you think, oh, shoot, I broke my phone. But you might just keep using it because it still works. And for me, my basic brokenness was lifelong feelings that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't important, heck, I was invisible. And I felt broken, but I could still live my life. I could still function. I could still do things. Then there's another kind of broken. Say you're walking across the street, you accidentally drop your cell phone, and now a truck runs it over. Now we have a different kind of a situation where it's not just broken, it's crushed and it doesn't function very well. So for me, being crushed was struggling with debilitating depression and social anxiety, and I couldn't function very well. And it felt like my comfort zone just collapsed, and I did not feel safe anywhere or with anyone. And I couldn't feel happy. I felt like I was an empty, hollow shell. So, what crushed me? We all have struggles and trials and things that happen in our lives, and I'm no exception. I've dealt with poverty. At one point in my life, I was so poor I couldn't afford to go to the grocery store and buy food. And I've dealt with illness. Once I broke a rib from coughing, I was so sick. And I've dealt with trauma, like when I arrived at the scene of a motorcycle accident in time to see my son's broken body lying in the middle of an intersection, surrounded by flashing lights and emergency personnel. And that's a scene I'll never forget. And I've been awoken in the middle of the night with a phone call from saying that my 9-month-old grandson had had a seizure and he wasn't expected to make it through the night. He was life flighted to Primary Children's Hospital where they did emergency surgery to try to relieve the pressure from his brain, followed by another delicate brain surgery to try to preserve his life. And they did, fortunately, they preserved his life, but he did sustain brain damage from this. I also have another beautiful grandchild who got cancer at age 5 months. So we all have issues, we have struggles, we have trials, we do the very best we can to handle it and to move forward. But sometimes, maybe something is so big or so unexpected that it just overwhelms us and we feel like we can't handle it. We don't handle it very well. And when we're in that spot, if we're not careful, then we can slip into depression. And that is what happened with me. It was like I fell into a deep, dark hole that was so deep that sunlight and happiness and hope couldn't even reach me. And there were no windows and no doors in this dark place. And I thought that there's no way out, that this is my new reality. This is as good as it gets. From this point on, the best I can ever hope for is just to endure in misery for the rest of my life.
Mm.
And I was in that spot for about 5 years, but almost no one knew because I was really good at hiding it. I took all the energy that I had to try to pretend that I was normal and that I was okay. And my sister, who was studying to be a life coach at the time, she was planning this women's retreat. And she rented this beautiful condo in the mountains. And for 3 days and 3 nights, she was going to teach this group of women how to be happy and be more fulfilled and things like that. And she didn't have any idea that I was struggling, but she invited me to come. And when she invited me, it made me sick, Lawrence. I thought, there's no way I could handle this. I can barely make it through a conversation before I want to escape, because I was trying so hard to pretend to be normal, and it was so hard. I cannot be around people day and night for 3 days.
Talk about it with others. It's almost like you're saying you had this kind of shield,
I guess. Weight. Yes, the whole shield. Everyone was scary. They were all terrifying. I thought the whole world was terrifying. Anyway, but even though I didn't want to go, and I didn't think it would work because I figured nothing would work, the idea wouldn't leave my head. And so I gathered up my courage and I went. And I'm so glad, because that decision to go changed my life. It was as if my sister lowered a ladder down into my deep, dark hole and showed me a way that I could climb out. And it was a ladder, not an elevator. It wasn't instant. It wasn't the press of a button. It was hard. It took effort. It took time, but it worked. And healing is not instant. It's not like flipping on a light switch. It is like a sunrise where it's gradual, and the change from moment to moment might be imperceptible, but it does come, and it is beautiful and it is powerful. And I have also learned that these feelings of being broken and crushed are actually quite common, even in people that you might think have it all together, because they might be masking it just like I was doing. And I wrote a book about my experiences. It's called Crushed: A Journey Through Depression. And I have received many letters from readers who have said, wow, it felt like I was reading my own story. It felt like you were in my head. And they felt seen and they felt understood. And they had hope that they could heal too. And this isn't just people who are struggling with depression and anxiety, but all kinds of people dealing with all kinds of different issues. Even though our personal life experiences can be very, very different, the feelings and the emotions that we have are very similar and relatable. And that's what Crushed is about. This is me opening myself up and allowing myself to be vulnerable so that I can help other people. I want to offer a ladder to anyone who feels trapped in a dark place. And this is also why I started my nonprofit charity, Hope for Healing, where we offer articles and free books and free audio courses, just those tools to help people feel like they can get their power back. It doesn't fix them, but it offers that ladder, that ability to be able to climb out and to move forward. So I have a personal story of someone helping me get my power back, and lots of stories of trying to help others get that power back so they don't feel trapped and stuck, but they know that there is actually hope for healing, hope for becoming better and happier and a better version of themselves.
Well, I get absolutely an amazing story. First of all, just through that entire process, I've got a number of questions that were coming to me through.
Good. Let's have them.
The empowerment that we started with, it actually shows that because you've gone through it, I guess your book has empowered so many people, not just to help them, but to help them confront it. First of all, and just to go back a few steps, I'm quite keen to hear the difference, because there might be people who aren't there yet, but they might get this later in their life. What is the main difference between being broken, apart from the great analogy about the phone? What would you define as being the main difference between being broken and then being crushed?
To me, for my personal experience, was the level of brokenness where I couldn't function very well. But in a way, Lawrence, having that experience of being broken and that experience of being crushed was kind of a blessing in disguise. Because when I was broken, I thought, well, I can still function.
Mm,
I can still do things. I can still move forward. I can still live my life. But it was not until I reached that deep, 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 dark place where I realized I have to do something. I
mm-hmm,
have to make a change because I can't function like this. I can't. I mean, it was 5 years of kind of getting down, down, down. Um, but when she offered, even though I didn't want to go, I felt so desperate that I had to do something,
mm-hmm,
that it turned out to be a good thing. And the same process of healing from being crushed also healed me from being broken.
mm.
It takes care of both. So it's a good thing. So if
Yeah.
you feel like what you're doing is good enough and you can just keep moving and you're not ready to make a change, if someone just stops at broken and fixes it there, you're going to have an awesome life. Anybody that you can spare that pain and that anguish would be a delightful thing. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to go through that before we
Yeah.
realize I got to do something.
Yeah. Does it ever feel that, but when you're at that broken stage and that earlier stage of maybe having one or a handful of things at that time, and like you say, still living a good life, still being able to, you have your ups and downs, but do you think that people aren't brave enough to confront them then? Or do you think it's a case of, I have that strength, I can deal with this? Or what do you think, like, that stage could be done to help at that stage? Do you think it would be confronting it, or do you think people just need to go through that process of then becoming crushed, as you put
Oh,
it?
I hope not. I don't want anyone ever, ever, ever to go through what I went through.
Mm,
No, being crushed is not required, not at all. We can help and work on ourselves and improve and find joy from any stage. In fact, if we're stronger and we are better prepared with all of the tools that we need to be happy and to be whole, then when big problems come, they don't overwhelm us as much. We're able to handle those challenges and we're able to
mm,
become more resilient. So when something knocks you over, you can get back up instead of slipping into that nasty pit of despair.
mm,
So I'm hoping, again, by sharing a story and having people maybe realize that they're not alone.
yeah.
Sometimes when we feel something, we feel like we're the only person who has ever felt this way. I'm the only person who feels like I'm not good enough. And if anybody ever finds out, they won't want to be my friend. They won't want to talk
Mhm,
to me. And I've learned that our strengths can impress people, but it's actually our weaknesses that can impact other people.
mhm,
And so as we allow ourselves to be honest, and when my sister, again, she had invited me and I thought, oh, no way, no way, no way, no way. And we had a conversation and I said, I love you. I know you've worked really hard on this and I would love to support you, but I'm not in a good place and I
mm,
don't think I can handle it. And that was the first time I was brave enough to even admit to her that I wasn't in a good place.
mm,
Before I was just trying to pretend that everything was fine. And her response was so beautiful. She said, "You don't have to come to support me. This is not about me. This is about people who want to come and learn how to be happy." And she said, I did not know that you were having a hard time, and I'm so sorry. But I understand because people thought I had it all together when I was actually, a mess inside. And she said, "But now I feel genuinely happy, and it's beautiful." And when she said those things, there were a couple things that she did. One is she didn't try to force me or guilt me into doing something. She gave me permission to say no. She gave me that respect. And even though it seems like a small thing, at the time it was so huge. I felt so weak and so powerless that having someone say, "I trust you. You don't have to come if you don't want to. This is what you want," was like that little bit of power, like, oh, I have a power to choose. And that was a beautiful thing. And then when she said she understood, I thought, "Oh, you do? you mean maybe this is okay? Maybe you can understand me, and maybe you could actually help me. And it opened just that teeniest little bit of hope that I thought had just been slammed shut forever. So even just the tiniest little things, anything that we can do to help empower people, by allowing them to own their own problems or make their own decisions. And it can seem nice, and it can even seem mean, where it's like, no, this is your problem and you own it. But it helps them by owning your own situation. It is empowering.
No, absolutely. And one thing that struck me there was the permission side of things, almost that permission to be vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
And do you think it's like instinct or intuition to seek permission to be vulnerable, or and do we need that, or do you think there is a way to almost not ask for permission or not need permission?
That's an excellent question. And I would say it depends on the person. Someone who feels that power and that self-confidence is not going to require permission from an outside source. They're going to feel and already know, this is mine, this is my choice, I own it. But for someone who's struggling and feeling that weakness and feeling helpless and hopeless, then sometimes that giving permission or allowing something is just that little bit of reminding them who they really are, because we do have our own power and we do have our own permission, but sometimes we forget.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And so to slightly pivot a little bit, because you've given great context, I definitely think that from your own experience of hearing it from others, as well as your own experience of going through it, I definitely think there will be people that listen to this and they will maybe reflect and feel, oh, maybe I have gone through something similar, or maybe they're in a position where they've got a few things and they're starting to see the commonalities as of that. And there's a few different ways that we can that I can ask this, but would you have any tips or advice for someone who is in that kind of darker place, or starting to feel that anxiety creep up on them at all, that you think would be very useful to them?
That is excellent question, because if it's not applicable to the people who are listening and to other people, then nothing that I say really matters. And I would like to invite anyone who's interested to visit my website at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. And I have several articles in there that are specifically geared to people who are struggling with the things that I did, like someone who is dealing with depression, someone who feels like they're not good enough. And I also have another thing that's specifically geared to those who are caretakers or loved ones of someone who's struggling with this, because it can be very, very frustrating for them, where you feel powerless to help someone. And so I would recommend going to there to be able to get kind of an outline thing. But my first, just very general overall, is one, know that you're not alone. Know that there are other people who have gone through this. And two, know that there is a way out and that it's going to be okay. So that would be, in a nutshell, what I'd like to share.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll obviously pop that in the show notes, which will be great to just access during or straight after this. But I'm sure the value of experiences and perspectives that you give there will be very useful for people to seek like their own individual circumstances, like you say, which is great. I definitely feel, I think from my own personal point of view, from a career element, I've definitely felt in like a dark place previously. So that's like, if people are listening to this and it's a career side of things, they'll be able to find something around that or anything else. So thanks for that. The to kind of continue this conversation, I'm quite keen to hear about what helps you now. You've obviously gone through this experience, you've reflected upon it wholly, and I've got a couple of questions around now. And are there things that you do now that help maintain your, well-being, your state of mind, that you think might have helped you during that initial kind of broken phase? Things that maybe you wish you'd known, or you think might have helped at that stage, or simply just help now?
Excellent question. And you brought up some really good points. Some is the aspect of maintenance, and maintenance is a very important thing, because even though I have climbed that metaphorical ladder and I'm in a good place, do you know, life hasn't gotten any easier. Things haven't changed. More problems have come, and things do still keep coming. And so we have to be able to stay in a good place. So yes, maintenance is very important. And some of the things that I do is I spend some time in the morning and in the evening working on just basic mental health and well-being. Like, I make sure that I exercise, and I make sure that I spend some time in the morning to reflect and to be able to pray and to meditate. And there are things that I do. And in the evenings, I make sure that I write something about what I was grateful for in the day, because gratitude is actually one of those things that helps us to pull ourselves into a better place. And it sounds like something that's not that big of a deal, but there have been so many studies that show what gratitude does for our bodies and our minds. It actually improves the neuroplasticity of the brain, and it helps us to be able to adapt better to change. So when something comes, if we're in a grateful state of mind, we're better able to handle it than if we're not in a grateful state of mind. There was another study done at Berkeley University in the United States, and they took a control group and they took another group. And the control group, they said, just keep doing what you're doing. And the other group, they said, we want you to actively practice gratitude. We want you to write gratitude journals and think about things that you're thankful for. And then after a period of time, they put fMRI scanners on their brains to measure the brain activity. And they found that the group that was actively practicing gratitude had more activity in the prefrontal cortex area, which is where we have conscious decision making, where we're able to be in the present, where we're able to think. And so the research indicates that when we're grateful, we're actually able to make better decisions. We're better able to handle things, and we're also better able to be in the present moment, which is kind of an interesting thing, because when we're feeling overwhelmed, people say, like, I have a lot on my plate. And when they say that, even though there isn't an actual plate, we all seem to be able to understand that there are a lot of things that are in my mind that I'm thinking about. And we're dealing with our problems and things that are going on now, but we're also worried about things that happened in the past and things that are happening in the future and what might happen in the future. And when we're able to just release some of the past and some of the future just a little bit and think about now, it kind of puts less things on that plate so that we're able to handle those things a little bit better. And also, by being more in that decision making, it helps us to get a little bit out of that autopilot where we just run on our subconscious kind of, and we're able to be in our conscious mind where we're not just reacting, we're deciding.
Yeah, that really goes back. That reminds me of the point you made about you felt broken for about 5 years, going up and down, and it sounds like through that you maybe were going through that autopilot, sleepwalking kind of mode of trying to protect yourself, which I completely I completely get that. I've definitely gone through that as well. But when you start to wake up and say, write down the things you're grateful for, or get all of these thoughts down on paper, however you want to do it, it can be quite liberating. So yeah, I mean that's great. I've actually heard of another, maybe one of those studies or a similar study, that the impact that gratitude can have on the when you do it for 30 days, that first 30 days can have an enormous impact on your well-being. And the thing that I took the most there from you was that gratitude can be very useful during change in our own environments, change to our routines, and it can really allow you to appreciate what opportunities you're getting through whatever the change is, the overwhelm that you've got. Maybe it's a new job, maybe you're moving city or country or whatever, but that gratitude is almost a way of grounding yourself. So that's definitely something I would love folk to take away.
Isn't it amazing? And it's something that's so simple. It is
Yeah.
small and simple and easy to do. And it's free. I mean,
Yeah.
it's totally free. And yet the benefits that it can have are amazing and huge and impactful.
Mhm.
Another thing that I do is as I'm writing my little journal in the evening is I write things that were a success of the day, something that I did well. Before, when I was struggling and focusing on the negative and, oh, I didn't do this and I didn't do that and I failed at this or whatever, in my mind, that was all I could see. And by consciously making a choice and say, no, I did a good thing today. I did this right and I did that right. And stacking those little successes and those little present moments. And it helps, again, put your power back. Like, I do have value. I am good enough. I, I'm not invisible. I can do good things and I can have a positive impact and I can add value and I can do these things. And it helps just to kind of put just a little bit of fuel in the tank, so to speak, where you can keep running that car. So they're small and simple things that we do. I've learned that education is wonderful, but education doesn't change things. It's application that changes things. So we have to learn something and then we have to do it. So I can say, oh, isn't gratitude a lovely thing? And isn't writing a success journal a lovely thing? But if I don't actually grab my pen and my piece of paper and write it down, then that it didn't actually help me.
Yeah.
And then there's a little bit like you mentioned about maintenance and consistency. Again, it's not like flipping on a light switch. It's not like, wow, I wrote down 2 things I was grateful for. Woohoo! I am all better and life has just gone beautiful. It's just, okay, so I did that, and then the next day I do it, and then the next day, and it just kind of helps keep, just like we have to eat every day. I mean, we just have to work on ourselves just a little bit every day to say, you know what, I am a wonderful person and I do good things. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves that that's a thing.
Beautiful. Um, I'd love to finish on a couple of positive questions that will really help people. I'm quite a positive person. And the first thing I would like to ask you, and I think this will be really good because you're um, in this position of you've gone through this experience and you're very into the importance of self-improvement. And it's something that I think can kind of go on that point that you're saying at the end of the day, even if you're just writing down those little successes, it's a wonderful thing. And is there anything that you do that you focus on to improve on even just 1% or being 1% better each day? Is there anything maybe apart from the things that you've mentioned already that you do that help with that to help you continue to be that better version of yourself?
I love that. I love that you're talking about 1%, that it's not expecting something huge and something overwhelming, but that it is something that is just a gradual, a little bit, and to recognize the progress and the success rather than panicking about making some huge thing. So those are some of the things that I do. I also, like I said, I exercise and I do things like that. And then sometimes I'll make an effort, well, often to reach out to another person.
Mm.
Another thing I love to do is service. Now, one of the things that I found when I was struggling with this depression and this anxiety, I was very self centered. Not that I was cruel or mean or anything, but my whole purpose, my function was trying to protect myself. I was concerned about my safety. I was trying to survive. And when we're stuck thinking about ourselves, it doesn't it doesn't go very well, actually.
Mhm.
And when we reach outside of ourselves and serve somebody else, it helps kind of open that door so that we're not just focused and panicked about ourselves. And then all of a sudden, things that seemed overwhelming, they don't bother us so much anymore. So those are a couple of other suggestions.
No, perfect. The service thing is great. Just fostering those relationships that you've got, but and you'll be more than aware of this, but that sense of fulfillment you get from serving someone else with no expectation of anything in return can be very, very fulfilling.
Oh, it's
And
amazing.
one thing I'd love to end on, right? Because it's the first thing that you put on your profile when we connected, and it's this quote of "your mess is your message," and it's such a I know that it could be perceived as being negatively connotated because of the word mess, but I think it's so beautifully put where you've got to embrace your mess, you've got to share your mess with the world. It ties everything in around that vulnerability, weakness is a strength, etc., etc. And I just want to ask around, what is it that people need to do with their mess if they're, say, wanting to make the most of it, if they're, at work, in their career, in their relationships, whatever it is? How do people make the most of their mess that they've got?
Excellent question, because we all have a mess, some mess here, mess there. So I think some of the things that we can learn from the idea that your mess is your message is that the things that we've gone through, our experiences, our hardships, our trials, end up being the things that we can use to bless and benefit other people. Because as we're traveling along the pathway of life, there are people in front of us and there are people behind us. And as we go through our struggles, sometimes we look to someone who has already been through that problem to be able to help us to be able to make it through. And then once we have been able to emerge through that problem, then we're able to reach out and help the people on the pathway behind us. So, one thing I think we can get out of this idea is one, again, you're not alone. And two, that these experiences that you're having can, in a way, turn out to be a good thing. They give you a way to reach out and connect with other people and to be able to serve and to be able to benefit other people. So, yes, the messes and the experiences that I've had did not enjoy, and the ones that still come, I still don't enjoy them, but it's okay. And they have enabled me, empowered me to be able to reach out and to be able to serve my fellow man. And that means a lot to me. I want to have something of value to give. And because of my mess, my experiences, I do. I have something of value to give other people. And that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, so it's real, isn't it? It's
Very.
real. It's not my experience is better than yours. This is my experience. This is all the mess that comes with it, and this is how you can use it to help you. So love it. Absolutely love it. Well, thank you, Linda.
Oh,
I
it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for reaching out.
I've thoroughly enjoyed that. And like I say, I'll pop any notes, like your link for the non-for-profit,
Oh, yes, please.
in the show notes for people to look at. But I'm sure we may do this again if we want to build on anything that we've chatted about. But thanks again
Of course.
for joining.
It's been a pleasure.
So there we have it. A wonderful conversation around empowerment, about recovery, about permission to be vulnerable and how powerful that can be. Using gratitude to the most effective point that we possibly can, and embracing our mess that we have. So I hope you took plenty from that episode. It was a joy to have Linda on. Might have her on in the future as well. I'll pop her website in the show notes for you as well. Until next time, have a good week.